You are not busy, you are postponing. Say that back to yourself because it's the only sentence in this entire video you actually need to hear, and everything else is just proof. You have a life you are planning to start, not the one you're living right now, the real one, the one after this project, after the kids are older, after the debt clears, after you find the energy, after the timing is finally right. You've been building this second life in your head for years, adding to it, polishing it, moving its start date further out every single time the current date arrives, and you're still not ready. And here's the sentence you have never once said out loud because saying it would collapse the whole arrangement. You already know later is a lie. You've just never made yourself say it because saying it out loud would mean admitting you've been choosing this, not waiting for it. And remember, the motive of life is to live a happy life, not work hard until you are not able to enjoy any of the money you made, not until you cannot even work on your own. Nobody has ever sat you down and made you defend that belief out loud, so it survived, completely unexamined for your entire adult life. And look at exactly what you built on top of it. Because none of this is abstract. This is your actual week. You've been telling yourself you'll actually start living once this current stretch is over. And this stretch has had a different name every year for as long as you can remember. You haven't taken a real day where you did nothing but exist, no agenda, no catching up, in longer than you can accurately count. You've walked past the same view, the same sky, the same ordinary miracle of being a conscious thing on a rock in space thousands of times and felt nothing because you were thinking about tomorrow's version of today. You skipped the thing you actually wanted to do this weekend because it felt indulgent and did the responsible thing instead. And you've made that exact trade so many times you no longer notice you're choosing obligation over your own one life every single time it comes up. Every one of those is the same lie wearing a different shirt, and you've built your entire adult life around it without once catching yourself doing it. This video is here to take the pretending away from you, on purpose, by name, using your own week as the evidence. Because the pretending is not a bad habit, it's the disease itself. Here it is, in its native habitat. I'll call her back this weekend. We'll go once things calm down. I'll start once January hits. I'll tell them how I feel when the moment's right. I'll take that trip once work slows down. I'll patch things up with him eventually. Every one of those sentences contains a hidden claim that the version of you making the promise will still exist later, in a body that still works, next to people who are still alive, in a world that has agreed to wait. None of that was ever guaranteed. You just filed the claim anyway because everyone around you was filing the same one, so it never looked like a lie. It looked like a plan. Here's the part that should actually disturb you. The demands of today never go away. You are not postponing until the noise clears, because the noise is not a weather system that passes. It is the permanent condition of being alive. There will always be a project. There will always be a busy season. There will always be a reason this particular month is not the right one. You have been waiting for an opening in a schedule that was never designed to open, and calling the wait temporary. You didn't invent this, by the way. This is standard. This is what almost every human being who has ever lived has quietly assumed, right up until the assumption failed. And when you look at exactly how it fails, it should change how you spend tonight. And notice something else, because it's the part that should actually scare you. You've told yourself once this is over so many times you've stopped hearing it as a lie. Once the debt is finally paid off, you tell yourself, then you'll breathe. Then the debt clears, and there's a new number you're already saving toward before the relief even landing. Once the kids are finally through school, you tell yourself, the exact same sentence your own parents said about you 20 or 30 years ago, while you were the reason they were still waiting. And when your kids finally do finish school, watch what actually happens. The line doesn't close. Your brain has already built the next one, the wedding, the grandkids, the health scare, the retirement that needs planning, before you've had a single interrupted evening to actually enjoy the finish line you spent 2 decades walking toward. Once the promotion comes, once the house is paid off, once you finally retire, you have never once in your entire life reached one of these lines and had your mind simply stop. Not once. It has never once said, enough, we can rest now. It manufactures the next deadline before you finished exhaling from the last one. Ask yourself honestly, right now, can you even remember what no next finish line would feel like? You can't, because you've never experienced it. Every single time you've gotten close enough to touch one of these lines, it has moved. Not because life is cruel, because the finish line was never a real place to begin with. It was always a story your own mind was telling you so that today didn't have to be the day that mattered. There's a hospice nurse who spent years sitting with people in their final weeks, and she wrote down what they told her. Not what motivational speakers imagine dying people say, but the actual, repeated, almost boring consistency of the real regrets. And they are not exotic. Nobody in the final weeks of their life has ever said they wished they'd worked one more weekend. Nobody has said they wished they'd checked email more. What they said, over and over, from different countries, different decades, different lives, was almost the same 5 things. They wished they'd had the courage to live as themselves instead of performing the life other people expected of them. They wished, and this came from nearly every man she nursed, that they hadn't worked so hard because it cost them their children's whole childhood and their partner's company in exchange for a treadmill that never once said, "That's enough." They wished they'd said the true things instead of swallowing them to keep the peace, and many of them had gotten physically sick from the swallowing. They wished they'd kept the old friendships instead of letting them dissolve quietly under the excuse of being busy, not realizing what those friendships were worth until it was too late to find the people again. And they wished simply that they had let themselves be happier instead of treating happiness as something that would arrive once the conditions were finally right. Look at what's not on that list. Not one dying person in years of recorded final conversations said, "I wish I had waited for the perfect moment." Not one said, "I'm glad I held off until I was ready." The regret runs in exactly one direction, always toward the thing that got postponed until postponement became permanent. And here's what should really land. These were not reckless people. They weren't gamblers or dreamers who threw caution away. They were exactly like you, reasonable, responsible, waiting for sensible conditions before they acted. The waiting felt like wisdom the entire time they were doing it. It only revealed itself as the disease in the final 12 weeks, when there was no more later left to spend it in. You are currently doing what they did. You feel responsible right now, tonight, for waiting. You will not find out it was the disease until you're the one in the bed. So let's run it, not as poetry, as arithmetic, because arithmetic is the only thing that gets through denial. If your parents are alive, count the number of times you actually see them in a year. Not talk to, see, in person, in the same room. For most adults living their own lives in their own city, that number is somewhere between 4 and 12. Now multiply it by the years they have left. Nobody knows the exact number, but you can make an honest estimate from their age and health, and when you do, you will land on a number small enough to write on one hand. Not plenty of time, a specific, shrinking, countable number of remaining visits. That is what you actually have. Not a relationship, a dwindling stock of afternoons. Do it again with your own body. There is a window, call it the years where your knees don't ache before you climb stairs, where a long flight doesn't wreck your back, where you could still physically do the trip, the hike, the thing you keep saying you'll do when things calm down. That window is not indefinite. It has already been closing for years without an announcement, and it will keep closing while you wait for a calmer month that isn't coming. Do it with your friendships. How many people currently in your life could you call at 2 a.m. and have them actually answer, not out of duty, but because the friendship is still alive and tended? Now think about how long it's been since you called any of them without a reason. Friendships don't end in a dramatic fight most of the time. They end the way the hospice patients described it, quietly, through neglect, until one day you notice the friendship has been dead for 2 years and nobody sent an obituary. None of these numbers were hidden from you. You simply never asked, because not asking let you keep pretending the supply was endless. It isn't. It has never been. You've just never been billed for the difference. So answer it directly, right now. Don't soften it. How many more times will you actually see your mother alive? Not a lot, a number. Say it in your head. Now ask yourself why you're not already planning to close that gap this month instead of this year. Here's the exact mechanism of the lie so you can see it operating in real time instead of in the abstract. Someday is not a day of the week. It does not appear on any calendar you own. It is not Tuesday, it is not the 15th, it is not after the holidays. It is a placeholder your mind invented so that a difficult decision could be deferred without technically being refused. You get to feel like you haven't said no, You've just said not yet, and not yet feels completely different from no, even though, run out across an entire lifetime, they produce an identical result. The thing never happens. Watch how it operates with something small, because the pattern is the same at every scale. You've had a book on your shelf for 3 years. You're going to read it when things settle. Things have never settled, not once, in 3 years, and there's no evidence they intend to start. The book is not waiting for a quiet season. The quiet season is not a real place. It is the same imaginary Tuesday every postponed decision gets filed under, and the file just grows. Now scale it up to the sentence you haven't said to somebody, the apology you haven't made, the parent you haven't forgiven or been forgiven by, the reconciliation you keep assuming you'll get to. All of it is sitting in the same folder as the unread book, waiting for a day that does not exist on any calendar in the world. And you are the only person who can see that the folder is actually a form of refusal wearing a patient face. Not yet is a decision. You've just structured it so you never have to feel yourself making it. You believe you're waiting because you're being responsible. You're not. Look closer. You're not waiting for the right time to have the hard conversation. You're afraid of what happens in the room once you have it. You're not waiting for more money to take the trip. You're afraid of standing somewhere beautiful next to the person you didn't bring, or without the version of yourself you promised you'd be by now. You're not waiting for the kids to be older so you can finally live for yourself. You're afraid of what's left of you once the kids need me stops being a valid excuse to hide behind. Not yet doesn't postpone the task, it postpones the fear. And every day you get away with it feels like a win. It isn't. You didn't get away with anything. You spent it. There's a second version of this that wears a nicer coat, ambition instead of fear. Not skilled enough yet, not established enough yet, not ready yet. That's not humility, that's the same trap with better clothes on. A reason that renews itself forever, so you never have to test whether you can actually do the thing. Readiness doesn't arrive, it's manufactured by motion. Wait to feel it first and you've built a cage with no door. You need to sit with a few of these because the pattern only becomes undeniable once you see it happen to people who were exactly as certain as you are that they had time. There is always a version of the story where someone puts off calling their father because the timing never feels right, and then the phone rings one Tuesday with news that erases every future Tuesday they were saving the call for. There is always the version where two people mean to repair something between them, nothing dramatic, just a slow drift they both noticed and both assume would eventually be addressed when things calm down. And then one of them is simply gone in an ordinary way on an ordinary day, and the repair becomes permanently unavailable. There is always the version where someone spends a decade saying they'll finally take the year off, do the thing they actually wanted once the mortgage is paid or the promotion lands or the kids are through school. And the diagnosis arrives first, and the only trip that gets taken is to the hospital. None of these people were unusually unlucky. This is not a horror story designed to scare you. This is the base rate. This is simply what happens to a percentage of every single group of people who assume, reasonably, that they have more time than they turn out to have. You have made that same assumption today. You will make it again tomorrow. The only real question is whether you're one of the people the assumption quietly worked out for, or one of the people it didn't. And you don't get to know in advance which group you're in. Nobody does. That is the entire point. And here is the detail that should stay with you longest. In almost none of these stories does the person who ran out of time realize in the moment that it was the last chance. The final ordinary phone call looked like every other ordinary phone call. The unremarkable Tuesday looked exactly like the 6,000 other unremarkable Tuesdays that came before it. There is no music cue. There is no warning. The last time is indistinguishable from every other time until it's already over, which means you cannot rely on your own instincts to alert you when you've reached one. You have to act as if every ordinary moment might be carrying that weight, because occasionally, without any announcement, it is. Here's what makes this whole thing so difficult to sit with. None of it is news to you. You are not learning right now that time is limited. You've known that since you were a child watching a grandparent age. What you've never done is let the knowledge reach the part of you that makes decisions. You hold the fact the way you hold the fact that the sun will eventually die. Technically true, entirely irrelevant to your Tuesday. And that's the actual mechanism keeping you stuck. Not ignorance, but a very well-defended distance between what you know and what you act on. You can recite that life is short in the exact breath you're using to justify pushing something off another year. And the two statements don't even feel like they contradict each other because you've never made them stand in the same room. This is why information alone was never going to fix this. You didn't need another fact about mortality. You needed the fact to stop living in a separate part of your head from your decisions. That's what this video is actually for. Not to tell you something new, but to drag the thing you already know into the room where you make your choices, and hold it there until it's uncomfortable enough that not yet stops feeling safe. There is one version of later that deserves its own execution, because society built the whole machine around it: retirement. The idea that there are two lives, the working one you're allowed to be miserable in, and a second one waiting on the other side, funded and finally free, where the actual living starts. Look at what that arrangement is really asking you to do. Spend 40 years in a condition you'd never choose and pay for the escape from it using the only currency you have: the years themselves. Unlike money, those years don't come back if the thing you saved them for never shows up. And for a huge number of people, here's what shows up actually looks like: a body that spent its best decades behind a desk, arriving at the finish line with knees that don't do the hike anymore, a back that can't survive the flight, a decade less energy than the trip requires. Nobody drew that version into the brochure. The brochure has two healthy people on a beach, laughing, unhurried, sketched by someone who never once ran the numbers on what 40 years of waiting does to a body before it's finally allowed to rest. This isn't an argument against saving. It's an argument against the lie that misery now is a down payment on joy later. There is one life. It's the one you're currently in. Whatever retirement was supposed to hand you, time with people you love, the freedom to actually live your hours, test it now in whatever small dose is available now, instead of betting the whole thing on a finish line a percentage of people never reach healthy enough to cross. Notice how "I'm just so busy right now" gets said rarely with despair, almost always with a strange quiet pride, the tone of someone reporting an achievement, not a symptom. Busy is the one excuse in modern life that doubles as a compliment. Nobody gets challenged for it. Nobody has to defend it. Try saying the true version instead. "I've been avoiding my brother because I don't know what to say to him. I haven't taken a real day off in 3 years because stopping means feeling the thing I've been outrunning." Say either of those out loud and watch the room go quiet. Say, "I'm just so busy," and watch people nod like you told them something admirable. So ask the question. Busy is specifically built to block: what would you actually have to face if your schedule cleared tomorrow? A marriage gone silent? A grief you outran instead of survived? A version of yourself you've been too occupied to sit across from? For a lot of people, busy isn't what's filling the time. Busy is what's guarding the door. You don't have to open that door tonight, but stop calling it a schedule when it's a shield. Here's one more piece of arithmetic worth sitting with, because it explains exactly why the lie survives as long as it does. The math of postponement always feels safe in the moment it's being done, because the version of you doing the postponing is always still healthy, still capable, still surrounded by the people you're deferring. The cost of not yet is invisible at the exact moment you're incurring it. It only becomes visible retroactively from a position, a hospital bed, a funeral, an empty house, where the bill has already come due and there's no longer any way to pay it differently. This is precisely why willpower and good intentions were never going to be enough to fix this on their own. You cannot out-intend a bias that is specifically engineered to feel invisible while it's happening. The only thing that actually interrupts it is treating every ordinary day as if it might, without warning, turn out to have been one of the important ones. Because you now know from the actual pattern of how these things go that it sometimes is, and it never announces itself in advance. This is not a call to burn your life down and go reckless. That's the cheap hustle culture version of this message. Quit your job, book the flight tomorrow, YOLO your way into chaos. And it's just as dishonest as the waiting was, because it swaps one form of avoidance for another. Recklessness is not the opposite of postponement. It's postponement's twin, dressed up as urgency. And it usually burns out in 6 weeks because it was never built on anything except adrenaline. What's actually being asked of you is smaller and much harder. Pick one specific thing you've been keeping in the someday folder right now and give it a real date. Not soon, a date. The call to the parent you've been meaning to make? This week, not soon. The conversation you've been swallowing? Named, scheduled, had. The trip? Booked, not dreamed about. The apology? Delivered, in words, not rehearsed in your head for the 400th time. And do the harder version too. Look honestly at what you're actually afraid of underneath the logistics, and stop pretending the logistics are the real obstacle.
If you're afraid of the conversation is the actual thing you need to have immediately, precisely because you're afraid of it. Fear that a decision would fix is not a reason to wait, it's the entire reason to move. Stop making this about one conversation you're avoiding, because that's the small version and it lets you off easy. Widen it. This isn't really about a phone call. It's about the fact that you are currently, right now, living inside a life you keep treating as the rehearsal for a different one. Look at how much of an ordinary day you actually experience versus how much of it you sleepwalk through on the way to somewhere else. The commute doesn't count, you've decided. That's just transit, not living. The workday doesn't count. That's the thing you do to afford the parts that count. The errands don't count. The waiting doesn't count. By the time you subtracted everything that doesn't count, most people are left with maybe an hour or two of actual felt present existence per day. And even that hour is usually spent half present, phone in hand, already thinking about tomorrow's version of the same subtracted day. You are spending roughly 90% of your one existence on a life you keep treating as not yet real, waiting for the 10% to arrive and somehow retroactively justify all of it. That is the actual scale of what later costs you. Not one delayed reconciliation. An entire life quietly demoted to a waiting room while the thing you keep calling real living gets scheduled for a slot that never opens. And notice what you actually know if you're honest. You already know the sky looked a certain way this morning and you don't remember it because you were somewhere else in your head. You already know you've eaten hundreds of meals this year without tasting more than a handful of them. You already know there are entire seasons of your life you couldn't describe in detail if someone asked because you weren't in them when they were happening. That's not a metaphor. That is the literal, factual shape of how you've been spending the only thing you actually own. Some of this shows up in people, too. That part is real and worth naming once, briefly. Some of the most important people in your life will simply drift. The way old friendships die, not from a single event, but from years of we should catch up soon that never became an actual date. Nobody has to die for you to lose them. Distraction alone is enough. But don't let that be the whole lesson, because making this only about other people is how you let yourself off easy again. The bigger loss isn't a person you drifted from, it's the version of you that was supposed to be paying attention to an entire existence and instead spent it managing logistics, waiting for a slot marked later that was never going to open. The reconciliation is one item on a very long list. The list itself, the unlived hours, the untasted meals, the unseen sky, is the actual subject here. So here's the instruction, and it's not complicated. Pick 1 hour today and actually be in it. No phone, no rehearsing tomorrow, no managing the moment for later. Just the hour fully occupied by the person who's supposed to be living it. That's not a metaphor either. That's the whole practice, and it costs you nothing but the discomfort of finally showing up. Here's the whole thing, stripped to what's actually true. You do not have unlimited time. You never did. A specific, shrinking number of remaining conversations with the people you love. A specific number of mornings your body still does what you ask without complaint. A specific number of chances to say the thing before the chance closes on its own without asking permission. Nobody is coming to tell you when the number gets low. There is no warning system. The only difference between the people who reach the end with the 5 regrets and the people who don't is whether they let the someday folder keep filling for 40 years or opened it while there was still time left to empty it. Later is not a lie you tell other people. It's a lie you tell the only person who's ever actually been hurt by it. You are not busy. You are never busy. You are postponing and calling it busy so it wouldn't feel like a decision you made. There is no later coming to rescue you from the life you're currently living instead of the one you keep promising yourself. This is the version. Tonight is the only appointment you are ever actually going to get. Stop pretending you have time. You don't know that you do. Nobody ever has. If you made it this far, you already know this channel isn't built for comfort. It's for people willing to look at hard things without needing them softened first. And if this one got under your skin, if it named something you've been quietly avoiding for years, there's one thing you can do that costs nothing. YouTube gives smaller channels a feature called hype. It's not a like and it's not a comment. It's a separate button, and every viewer gets a few each week to spend on channels they think deserve to be found. On a channel this size, it counts for far more than it would on a large one. That's built into how it works on purpose so smaller voices get discovered instead of buried. If this said something worth more people hearing, that's the one action that actually moves it. Everything else, sharing it, sitting with it, the fact that you stayed for the whole thing instead of clicking away the moment it got uncomfortable, that's already more than most people are willing to give a question like this. Before you go, name the one thing you've been filing under someday. Not in the comments if you don't want to, just to yourself, and give it a date. Thank you for staying long enough to think about it instead of just feeling it and moving on. This is Eternal Rift.